Why was the broom late for the meeting? It overswept. I'm gonna go. Welcome to Rumble Book Club. I'm your host, Mike Hernandez, and let's get started with the show. Today, we're going to take a look at a terrifying book that I finished reading about a month ago, and I'm glad I did because now I get to share it with you. Today, we're going to take a look at the classic horror fiction, The Exorcist, by William Peter Blatty. This is the terrifying modern classic horror about a young girl who's possessed by the devil or a demon, and her mother's desperate efforts to save her using first medical treatments and then eventually employing the help of a priest to perform an exorcism. Blatty not only wrote this book, he also played a hand in the movie, which follows it relatively closely, the famous one with the spinning heads and the walking upside down and the pea soup vomit. Looking at the aesthetics real quick, it's definitely creepy. They employ red and black, these traditionally more sinister colors, and they take this feminine face and blur it a little bit, making direct eye contact, which is already kind of disturbing. So quite interesting, and I think it very, very well fits with the theme. It popped off the shelf. It's what kind of got me noticing it on the shelf at Barnes & Noble where I found it. I have a 2011 publication, although it was first produced in 1971. As for the readability, Blatty is quite fluent in providing these flourishes of language that allow a picture to be painted of the scenario that can be both wistful but also bleak and sinister in some parts, and then it'll wax and wane and give you moments of peace and tranquility, and then kind of pull you more into a melancholy shift through a turn of phrase, and then suddenly drop you off into these kind of dark, sinister words and phrases that automatically cast a shadow. And it very much follows the emotional state of the character who he's describing in whatever moment. So he's actually very intuitive of the characters and the way they might see the world and how he describes it. That being said, he does it very smoothly and very accessibly. He doesn't provide unnecessary language that's over the top in its complexity that might lose some readers. So it's a very accessible book for people of almost every reading capability once you reach the adult level and are capable of reading adult content. So it's easy on the eyes and easy on the mind. So as far as the readability goes, it gets a perfect score from me. 10 out of 10. Now let's look at the content. The story opens up with this mysterious encounter of this old man in the Middle East, and it has this melancholy feeling to it, this somber and sinister, dark feel to it, but it's not necessarily explained why, but you can tell there's a lot of foreshadowing. Then the story opens up into the true main characters, where you see a famous actress, Chris MacNeil. She's living in Washington, D.C. in a temporary condo because she's filming a scene about a college professor at Georgetown University, and she has with her several servants and a babysitter that live in the house and keep things running while she's away because she is divorced from her husband who's overseas, and her daughter, her teenage daughter, who's if I remember correctly 12 or 13 in the book, her name is Reagan. Reagan is growing up in a house without a father. She's not raised with any form of spirituality whatsoever, because Chris MacNeil is an atheist. MacNeil doesn't believe in God or in anything really after life, but she's suddenly starting to become focused on the concept of death over the course of filming. And her daughter picks up a Ouija board and begins to talk to this person who she says is approaching her in her mind. Her interactions with this mysterious person through the Ouija board, who she calls Captain Howdy, they start as very amicable and almost playful, but as the chapters go on, Reagan's interactions become more and more strained to the point where Captain Howdy, who by now we understand is not this, funny little Captain Howdy imaginary friend, actually begins attacking her, and through this progression eventually takes possession over her. The mother doesn't understand what's happening. She's searching desperately for a logical answer. She takes her to every doctor within the city, outside the city, takes her out of town, is losing job opportunities as a result of this to direct films, just trying to figure out what's wrong. And eventually, in sheer desperation, she recruits the help of a priest who's going through his own personal drama, through the loss of his mother, through the struggle of his own faith, although he is dedicatedly still performing mass and going to confession and trying to serve out his duties as a priest. He's struggling with his own waning belief in God. recruits his help to try to perform an exorcism. Now, this priest is also a psychologist, and he's torn between his lack of faith and the world that encourages that lack of faith, and the original faith that he held in the initial stages of his priesthood, and they're really conflicting, and you see that in his execution of the exorcist until he eventually recruits the help of an official exorcist, the elderly man who you see at the very beginning of the novel, and that's where things really collide and really explode. While the scenes of the possession of the girl's behavior in possession might seem extreme, and given the interviews I've seen with priests, real-life priests that have performed real-life exorcisms, some of it does seem a little bit out there, and maybe the progression from initial conversations and playing with the concepts of a Ouija board leading up to demonic possession in this book might seem very accelerated. The actual circumstances that entertain inviting the demonic spirits into your life do seem to follow a very accurate pattern in this book. I don't know whether Blatty is very familiar with the Catholic faith at all, although he writes very in tune with it. Everything that I've read, even small time things like the jokes between Dominicans and Jesuits and small things like that, it seems like Blatty is able to pick up a lot of nuance of the Catholic faith and does seem to have at least somewhat of an ordered theological mind to understand how possession takes place. It's not something that just drops into you out of the blue. There has to be an opening that a person allows Satan to come into their lives. And that progression might be slower in some, quicker in others, but he does seem to accurately portray the fact that there is a deep hole in this young girl Reagan's life through first the lack of her father being in the house, and then through the lack of spirituality and faith that her mother raised her up in, being an atheist, and then finally this big opening of actively inviting spirits that are not of God through this Ouija board, and everything really runs its course from there. So the progression of how you allow Satan into your life is very well spelled out, and it's actually very theologically accurate from what I can see in Blatty's writing. So as far as the content goes, for me, while it does get a little crass as far as the language it uses, I'm going to rate it relatively strong as far as the content goes, so it gets a 8 out of 10. I found this book at Barnes & Noble. Like I said, I'm not really shopping at Barnes & Noble anymore, so you can find it on Amazon. Even this edition, this 2011, this 40th edition, you can find it on Amazon. This book was legitimately terrifying. It was a scary read. It was one of those books where it's actually really hard to open at night. It's hard to even have the book up and facing you. For a while, it was kind of on my bookshelf like this, and just that alone just creeped me out too much. I just had to turn it and plug it in. It was very well written. It scared the hell out of me reading it. And if you are an adult, if you're someone over 18 and can handle mature content that is featured in this book, I highly recommend it. If you're a kid, do not read this book. You're not ready for it, I promise you. So the book is The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. Go out and get yourself a copy. Thanks for watching, everybody, and go read something.